I believe we've made some significantly better hiring decisions and avoided some bad ones based on the feedback that you've given us. If I was to give advice to someone considering working with you, I'd say it's a small investment to make to avoid an expensive mistake. It's been a while, right? We've been working together for many years. If I recall, I did a Google search, looked at what your offerings were, and as I recall, just reached out to you for a sample so I could see what the results would look like. We use a panel where we have several people touch the candidate, right? The hiring manager, the hiring manager's manager, the vice president of sales, who is the hiring manager's manager, and then myself representing human resources. On top of that, we get down to final candidates. We occasionally have an additional manager talk to the individual. Long story short, based on perceptions and paradigms, people form opinions on the individual, but we felt like, maybe there was something missing. And I do remember I primarily started this process through feedback from the gentleman who was my boss at the time. He was our chief commercial officer. And he brought up the idea, isn't there some way to evaluate these folks? It was his suggestion. And there's always that possibility that we're missing something, even though we all have different backgrounds and we all might be asking different questions, looking for different sets of skills and behaviors. So that was really the genesis for why we went down this road. And again, basically, you've got maybe 2 or 3 really good folks, and it's going to come down to splitting hairs. We want to really try to pick the best candidate for us. And so that's the value that we get out of the assessment. I believe we've made some significantly better hiring decisions and avoided some bad ones based on the feedback that you've given us. The other thing that I like, and I think I found that it's best to talk to you before I go and interview the candidate or the vice president interviews the candidate, if I can time it that way. I think that the feedback that you provide helps to target some really good questions to ask to get at those things that you see lying beneath the surface, but we really can't identify from the hard data. One of the things that's I think very valuable is over time what I have found is that the interpretation results, I always say, are remarkably accurate, because when you've identified something hiding, lurking, red flags outside of the obvious, like if they're not financially motivated, when you see something in the data that again, we can't quite explain, but we know it's going to be an issue. And this will go back, this actually goes into the specific story. I didn't pay attention and I didn't listen to you. And we went and hired that individual, particularly because we were under the gun to get somebody in the territory quickly, and found, how big a mistake it was. The story is, and this happened very early in our tenure together. We had this gentleman that you said, there's something going on with this guy. In his family life, it's in his business life. There's something happening here. I remember you told me specifically that, if you hire this individual, it's going to result in a bad fit, and you're not going to be happy with the hire. And I did not listen to you. And sure enough, about probably 3 months after we hired the guy started out fine. He came to my training class. I didn't see anything weird going on. He performed very well during training. But then we started to notice, we went to a sales meeting. We had a sales meeting shortly thereafter. He seemed very nervous at the sales meeting, very kind of jumpy. Not the same guy I talked to during the interview process, not the same guy I talked to in class. And then we get a call from the manager saying, I think there's something going on here. And I said, what's that? Well, I've worked with this guy a couple of times, and each time he comes to get me, he's in a different car. And I asked him about that. Where did this car come from? And he said, this is my wife's car. I'm driving, my car's in the shop. And so I said to the manager, what do you think is going on? And he said, I think he's still working for the last company which meant he's been working for them and took on and started working for us. And so he's working 2 jobs for like the last 3 or 4 months. I look back at his resume. I saw where he worked. I called that company up, managed to talk to human resources, and found out that he was still employed there. And the funny part was, and the lady said, well, why do you ask? I said, well, because he's been working for us for the last 4 months. And she went, oh, my dear, we're going to have to do something about this. Well, long story short, I terminated him. They terminated him the same day. And when the manager went to pick up his samples and his computer, asked him, why on earth did he do this? And it was all about sticking around with that other company so that he could get a bonus, a quarterly bonus that he was working on. Even though he wanted to leave the company, he didn't want to give up the bonus. And so my guess is all of those feelings going on in his head, knowing that he's interviewing for another company, taking tests to examine his skills and behaviors, all of that was weighing on him during this process. And that all came out in the assessment, that there was something going on. And sure enough, there was. That was the kick in the pants that I needed to make sure I got to listen to Barrett, because he knows what he's talking about. How would I describe it? I would say it's extremely easy getting the assessments set up and scheduled. I believe that, the conversations that we have, you're very honest with me. You're very professional with me. I appreciate you not giving me what you think I want to hear, but giving me exactly what you see in the results. It's taken me a little bit of time as far as the 3 parts to the assessment. I feel very comfortable now when you go through and you point things out. I feel comfortable. Oh, yeah, I think I see that in there. Oh, yeah, I see that there, what you're talking about, too. I value the relationship that we have, that we've developed with this process. I look at you as much of a partner with what I'm doing as anybody else on my team here who's involved in the process. If I was to give advice to someone considering working with you, I'd say it's a small investment to make to avoid an expensive mistake. With 3 words. Number 1, enjoyable. Enjoy working with you quite a bit. Satisfied with the work that we get out of you and the results that we get. And then the last, I think, is the most important. It's trusted. I think it makes a big difference. We have history together, and so it did make coming up with at least some notes on my answers, coming up with them very, very easily because of our history together.